Have you ever wondered what it would be like if you had access to the same wealth principles that the wisest man in the world used to amass his fortune? Imagine if these principles could transform your life and finances in ways you never thought possible. Today, we're diving into the 5 wealth rules of Solomon that you need to know. These rules aren't just ancient theories. They have the power to completely change how you view and achieve wealth. And to start this journey of wisdom and prosperity, leave a comment saying, "I am worthy of wealth and wisdom." This will help you commit to your goals. Shall we embark on this journey together? In a small village surrounded by green hills, lived a young man named Daniel. He was known for his insatiable curiosity and his burning desire to find the secret to true wealth. Despite working hard on his family's farm, he always felt that something was missing, that there was a deeper knowledge to be discovered. One morning, while walking through the village market, Daniel overheard 2 elderly men conversing. They were talking about the legendary wealth rules of the great King Solomon, known as the wisest and richest man who ever lived. Intrigued, Daniel moved closer and listened intently. "Solomon always said that true wealth goes beyond gold and silver," said one of the men. "He had 5 precious rules that guided his life and investments." Daniel was fascinated. "What are these rules?" he asked eagerly. The men looked at each other and smiled. "It's not that simple, young man. These rules are like pearls of wisdom, and you need to seek them out on your own." Determined to find these pearls of wisdom, Daniel decided he would not rest until he discovered Solomon's rules. He began asking all the village elders, hoping to find clues about where he could find this knowledge. His journey led him to an old library, where he found an ancient, dusty book written in a language he could barely understand. But within its pages, he found a passage that made him pause. "Seek wisdom as one seeks hidden treasures, and it will lead you to true wealth." Daniel realized that his quest for wealth didn't start with gold or silver, but with wisdom. With this new understanding, he promised himself he would follow every clue, every piece of advice, until he unraveled Solomon's 5 rules. With a heart full of hope and determination, Daniel set out on his journey, ready to learn and grow, knowing that true wealth begins with knowledge. And so began the first step of his grand adventure in search of Solomon's wisdom. Daniel, with the ancient book in hand, spent nights reading and rereading every word, every sentence. He knew that Solomon's wisdom was there, waiting to be uncovered. One night, as he read by candlelight, a phrase stood out before his eyes: "Wisdom is more precious than gold." This was the first rule. But what did it really mean? Daniel reflected on these words. He remembered the stories he had heard about Solomon, who chose to ask God for wisdom instead of riches or longevity. Solomon understood that wisdom was the key to all other blessings. Inspired, Daniel decided he needed to learn from the wise men of his own village. He sought out the elder Elias, a man known for his advice and deep knowledge. Elias lived in a small house atop a hill, surrounded by fruit trees and a well-tended garden. Upon arriving, Daniel found Elias sitting on his porch, reading a book. The elder looked up and smiled at the young man. "Daniel, what brings you here?" Elias asked in a gentle voice. "I am seeking wisdom, sir. I want to understand what it truly means to be wise and how it can help me achieve true wealth," Daniel replied, his eyes shining with determination. Elias gestured for Daniel to sit beside him. "Wisdom, my young friend, is the ability to make good decisions, to discern what is right and what is wrong. It is more valuable than gold because, with wisdom, you can acquire and maintain all other good things in life." Elias shared stories from his own life, moments when wisdom guided him to make difficult but correct decisions. He talked about how wisdom taught him to save in times of plenty and to be generous in times of scarcity. Learning to listen to others, to read, and to reflect are important steps to acquiring wisdom, Elias said. But above all, it is important to seek wisdom as a treasure, with patience and humility. Daniel absorbed every word. He realized that wisdom was not something gained all at once, but a continuous journey of learning and growth. He began to visit Elias regularly, learning about philosophy, history, and life's lessons. Over time, Daniel noticed changes in himself. He began to see the world more clearly, to make more thoughtful decisions, and to feel an inner peace he had never experienced before. He understood that Solomon's first rule was not just about acquiring knowledge, but about applying that knowledge wisely in daily life. And so, with the first rule deeply rooted in his heart, Daniel was more prepared for the next stages of his journey, knowing that wisdom was the foundation upon which all true wealth would be built. With wisdom as his guide, Daniel felt more confident to continue his journey. On a sunny morning, while working on the farm, he reflected on Solomon's next rule. He knew he still had much to learn and was eager to discover the second rule. One day, while helping his father plow the field, Daniel overheard an interesting conversation between two older workers. They were talking about the importance of hard work and how Solomon always emphasized diligence and persistence. The second rule of Solomon, thought Daniel, must be related to work. Determined to understand more about this rule, he sought out the elder Elias once again. Upon arriving at the wise old man's house, he found him in the garden, planting new seeds. Elias smiled as Daniel approached. "I see you are progressing well on your quest, Daniel," said Elias, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "What brings you here today?" "I'm trying to understand the importance of diligent and persistent work," replied Daniel. "I think this is Solomon's second rule." Elias nodded and invited Daniel to join him in the garden. Solomon said that diligent work brings prosperity. This means that to achieve true wealth, we must dedicate ourselves wholeheartedly to what we do. It is not enough to work hard for a day or a week. It is necessary to persist, even when the results are not immediate. As they planted together, Elias told the story of a farmer he had known years ago. This man worked tirelessly on his land, even during difficult years when the harvests were scarce. He believed that his constant effort would be rewarded. And indeed, over time, his farm became the most prosperous in the region. "Persistence is key, Daniel," explained Elias. "When you work diligently, you build a solid foundation for success. It may take time, but every effort you make counts. It's like planting these seeds. You won't see the fruits immediately, but with care and patience, they will come." Daniel began to apply this rule in his own life. He dedicated himself to work on the farm with more vigor and attention, always remembering Elias's words. In moments of fatigue or frustration, he thought of the persistent farmer and the fruits that were yet to come. He also began to realize that diligent work was not just about physical effort, but also about improving his skills and finding more efficient ways to perform his tasks. He read books about agriculture, learned new techniques, and sought advice from more experienced farmers. Over time, the results began to appear. The farm's harvests improved, and Daniel's family began to prosper. He saw in practice the power of Solomon's second rule and understood that true wealth does not come from a single effort, but from constant and dedicated work. Daniel was increasingly prepared for the next rules, knowing that with wisdom and diligent work, he was on the right path to achieving true wealth. Daniel, enriched by wisdom and strengthened by diligent work, began to realize that the wealth he was building went beyond material possessions. The prosperity his family experienced was a direct reflection of the continuous efforts and knowledge he had been acquiring. One afternoon, while walking through the village, Daniel noticed a scene that caught his attention. An elderly man was sitting by the roadside, clearly in need of help. People passed by him hurriedly, too busy to notice his suffering. Daniel felt a pang in his heart and decided to approach. "Sir, are you okay?" asked Daniel, kneeling beside the man. "I'm hungry, young man," the man replied in a weak voice. "I haven't eaten all day." Without hesitation, Daniel took the man to a nearby bakery and bought him a meal. As the man ate, Daniel remembered Solomon's words about generosity and charity. He felt he was about to discover the third rule. Upon returning home, Daniel sought out Elias to discuss what had happened. He found the elder on the porch, as usual, reading a book. After telling the story of the man in need, Elias smiled approvingly. "You are beginning to understand the third rule, Daniel," said Elias. "Solomon believed that true wealth also comes from sharing what we have with others. Generosity and charity are essential for a full and meaningful life." Elias explained that Solomon's third rule was, "Be generous and charitable." Solomon knew that material wealth, when hoarded without purpose, loses its value. But when used to help others, it multiplies in unexpected ways. Daniel remembered stories he had heard about Solomon, who frequently helped the poor and needy in his kingdom. The king understood that by caring for others, he was also caring for himself and his community. Inspired by this new understanding, Daniel began to practice generosity in his daily life. He helped his neighbors with small acts of kindness, donated part of his harvests to those in need, and offered his time and skills to help wherever necessary. He discovered that the more he gave, the more he received in return. Not in terms of material goods, but in satisfaction, gratitude, and a deep sense of purpose. The villagers began to see Daniel as a leader and an example of how generosity can transform lives. Gradually, the village became a more united and prosperous place. Daniel's generosity inspired others to follow his example, creating a wave of kindness that spread throughout the community. He realized that Solomon's third rule not only brought spiritual wealth but also strengthened social bonds and created an environment where everyone could thrive. With the third rule etched in his heart, Daniel was ready to continue his journey, knowing that true wealth lay in wisdom, diligent work, and generosity. Daniel, now a respected and admired figure in his village, continued his quest for Solomon's rules. With wisdom, diligent work, and generosity guiding his actions, he knew there was still more to learn. One morning, while tending to his crops, he recalled a conversation he had overheard between two merchants about the importance of planning. Intrigued, Daniel decided to visit the home of his old friend Elias for more advice. He found the elder sitting in his garden, surrounded by well-tended plants. "Good morning, Elias. I've been thinking about Solomon's next rule," said Daniel. "I believe it has to do with planning and prudence. Can you help me understand it better?" Elias smiled and motioned for Daniel to sit. "You are on the right track, my young friend. Solomon always said, 'Plan your steps with prudence.'" Elias began to explain that Solomon's fourth rule was about the importance of thinking long-term and making careful decisions. Solomon believed that without a solid plan, even the greatest efforts could be wasted. "Look at this garden, Daniel," said Elias, gesturing to the plants around him. "Each plant here was chosen and planted with a purpose. I planned where each one would go so that all could grow and flourish without competing for resources. Similarly, you need to plan your steps to ensure that every action you take is aligned with your larger goals." Daniel reflected on these words and realized that although he had worked diligently and helped others, he had not devoted enough time to planning his own steps. He understood that he needed to be more strategic in his actions. With this new understanding, Daniel began to apply the fourth rule in his life. He created a detailed plan for his finances, setting clear goals and defining steps to achieve them. He also began studying investments, seeking safe and prudent ways to grow his money. One striking example was when Daniel decided to invest in a new irrigation technique for his farm. He spent weeks researching, consulting experts, and calculating the costs and benefits. Finally, he implemented the new technique, which not only increased the productivity of his crops but also saved water and reduced long-term costs. Moreover, Daniel began to apply planning in his personal life. He set aside time to study, to be with family, and to help the community, balancing all the important areas of his life. Gradually, Daniel saw the fruits of his prudent planning. His farm prospered more than ever, and his life was more balanced and fulfilling. He understood that prudence was not just about avoiding risks but about making informed and strategic decisions that would lead to a safer and more prosperous future. With Solomon's fourth rule deeply embedded in his mind, Daniel felt more prepared than ever to face life's challenges. He knew that true wealth came not only from wisdom, diligent work, and generosity but also from the ability to plan and act with prudence. And so, with gratitude and determination, Daniel continued his journey, ready to discover Solomon's fifth and final rule, knowing that each step brought him closer to true wealth and the purpose of his life. Internalize these teachings. If necessary, watch this video again to firmly instill these tips in your mind. Always remember, our most valuable resource is our mind. When well trained, it can create immense wealth. Use this truth to guide your journey towards success and financial growth. Every step, taken with awareness and strategy, can bring you closer to your goals. You who have made it this far, this shows that you are a resilient person and deserve all the prosperity this world has to offer. Comment until the end, and I will leave a heart on your comment, proving your resilience. But don't leave the video yet. On the screen, I will leave 2 of my recommendations to add even more value to your knowledge. So, go watch them now.